Welcome everyone, it's great to have you here. It's just after 1, so let's make a start. Sheridan, if you could just pop it onto the next slide, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So afternoon everyone, it's absolutely wonderful to have you all here today. You are very welcome. I'm Steph Atalla and I'm a practice lead at the Centre for Family Safeguarding Practice in Hertfordshire County Council, a proud BASW member, and have been an active member of the 80/20 campaign since its inception. And time for relationship-based social work is something I'm really passionate about. So it's absolutely my pleasure to welcome you all to today's launch event. We hope you enjoy this event and thank you just so much for being here with us today. If we could just move it on to the next slide, please, Sheridan. That's wonderful. So a little bit about BASW. The British Association of Social Workers are the professional association for social workers in the UK. We are also a member of the International Federation of Social Workers. We are a strong independent voice of social work and social workers. So to start us off, here is a welcome message video from BASW England director Marish Stratulis, who unfortunately can't be with us today, but Sheridan's going to share the video with you all now.
BASW England's 80/20 campaign is all about time for social work and relationship-based practice. Today, I'm delighted to celebrate the launch of a suite of 4 top tips resources, which have been created with BASW members, people with lived experience and key stakeholders from across the sector. It's a fantastic day for celebration and a great achievement. These resources are part of ongoing work and our commitment to push for the changes that are needed to ensure that social workers are supported and have time to develop and sustain relationships with children, young people, adults, families and communities. Social workers continue to tell us that too much of their time is spent on administration tasks and not enough time is spent on direct relationship-based social work and reflective practice. Bureaucratic processes, computer systems and paperwork were highlighted, and through our ongoing campaign 80/20, we are going to be campaigning in the following areas. Social workers need enough time to work with people and families to achieve good outcomes, families staying together where appropriate. Social workers are frustrated that they are spending too much time on administration tasks instead of direct relationship-based work with children, families and adults. This has got to change. We've got to be person-centred and relationship-based. Therapeutic, reflective, relationship-based practice is the best way for social workers to bring effective and positive change to the lives of children, families and adults. The 80/20 campaign is our opportunity, our collective opportunity to create effective change by putting relationships in practice at the heart of what we do every single day. We want to enable relationship-based practice and increase public understanding of what social work and social workers offer. These top tips have been designed to be used flexibly by individual practitioners, by teams, employers, leaders, and together with people with lived experience. We have got to campaign and lobby for change. Join us. These resources are aimed at government, civil servants, employers, practitioners, and a targeted resource as part of digital transformation. Thank you for joining us today and have a wonderful webinar. Please put relationship-based social work and 80/20 at the heart of what you do. Thank you.
We're now going to introduce and welcome all of our presenters here today, each of whom will be sharing some key messages about the new top tips resources during the event. So I would just like to introduce to you first Olu Olushino, Andy Gill, Andrew Rees and Amanda Takavarasha. And these are our 4 presenters that will be presenting different elements of the top tips suite today. But before we do that, I just wanted to take you through some of the 80/20 campaign background. If we just move it on to the next slide, please, Sheridan. So The BASW England 80-20 campaign, which is all about, as you heard Mara say there, that time for relationship-based social work. BASW England's 80 campaign, in 2018, we conducted a survey in which social workers told us that 80% of their time was spent on administrative tasks, and not enough time, only 20% on direct work with children and families. The results of this survey provided key messages from social workers, which have continued to inform our subsequent 80-20 campaign activity, now focusing on social work with adults, children and families. So now if we just fast forward to 2021, here are some of the key messages from further survey questions and engagement activity. So more time is being spent on inputting into IT systems, paperwork, doing those administrative tasks other than direct work. Systems and processes drive in practice. Building relationships is not recognised as a valid reason for spending time with families. And there is an impact on well-being for those that are supporting those in need. So those practitioners that are working with adults, children and their families. So you can see here the themes coming through from 2018 and 2021, really needing to reverse that trend. That's all part of the 80-20 campaign and making time for that relationship-based social work. Let's just now have a quick look at the key messages from a roundtable meeting in 2022. So we're campaigning and promoting the importance of social workers spending that quality direct time with children, families and adults. And we know that relationship-based practice as a leadership role model within organisations can create time for that relationship-based practice. There's some research that was carried out in 2022 by the Social Workers Union and Bath Spa University about working conditions for social workers. And that echoed the messages that we've just continued to hear from social workers throughout the 80-20 campaign. And some of those are including, and you'll be familiar with some of these, lower caseloads to allow more person-centred approach, relationship building and time to be able to properly listen and support children, adults and families. And we know how important it is to truly hear what families and adults and children are telling us. Streamline the paperwork. So another kind of key point here is streamlining the paperwork so social workers actually have the time to go out to see those that we work with, rather than setting sort of practitioners up to fail or expecting long working hours. And respect was another key point here, ensuring that professionalism and the experience of social workers is recognised and really valued, truly valued, on par with other professionals. And we want to stop that individual blame game. Okay. Let's have a look together at the voices of lived experience. So we know how important it is, and I mentioned just now how we truly hear the voices of people with lived experience. So I just want to give you a moment, and we're just going to take a minute or two here. I want you just to read the quotes that we have in front of you from those that have lived experience. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to read that as well. You will have the slides as part of a PDF in the pack after the event. So please take some time to really to hear what those with lived experience were sharing there. And it's really important that we recognise and actually act on what we're hearing from those who need our help and support. And as you can see from the quotes here, the thing that came through, and we know this time and time again, and you'll know this as those working in adults or children and family social work, that time, transparency and trust are essential. We know that, we're told this all the time, and it's really shining through in those voices of lived experience there. So we really need to act on, we hear and then we act, really important. Okay. So in response to the experiences and key messages from social workers, peoples and families that have been shared in response to engagement with the 80-20 campaign, a suite of top tips resources has been created. I'm really excited to be able to share these with you today and to hear from you what you think. So these resources they were created with BASW members, people with lived experiences and key stakeholders from across the sector, and they set out what needs to happen or to change, things that can change to create the right condition to make that time for relationship-based social work a reality. So these top tips, as I mentioned earlier, and Maris did in the video, they focus on the government, employers, practitioners, and a targeted resource for setting out top tips to enable relationship-based social work in digital transformation. But next, you're going to hear from Olu, who is a BASW member, who will introduce the top tip resource targeted at the action that we're inviting the government to take to enable time for relationship-based social work.
Hi, my name is Oloyombo Olushino. I'm a social worker and BASW member. Today, I'm pleased to introduce to this top tips resource developed as part of the BASW England 80-20 campaign, which is all about time for relationship-based social work with children, families, and adults. This top tips resource is targeted at national and local governments, organizational leaders, trade unions, and other stakeholders, highlighting what is needed to make time for social work a reality. While time is short today, I would like to share with you two top tips that I think, if addressed at a national level, will make all the difference. Top tip 3, implement standards and a whole system approach to managing safe workloads for social workers at every level of their career, as set out in the professional capabilities framework. 46% of social workers who responded to the 2023 BASW survey felt that excessive workload was their biggest pressure. 50.21% reported not feeling able to manage their current workload. This issue has been consistently highlighted in the BASW survey for the last 3 years. Research undertaken in 2017-2018 by BASW University, the Social Workers Union, and the British Association of Social Workers into social workers' well-being across the UK showed that coordinated action is needed to improve social workers' working conditions across the UK. 5. This is to enable social workers to thrive, to prevent burnout and loss of staff, particularly from statutory roles. Key messages: the government must evidence to the profession that it is valued by developing and implementing a national workforce strategy, adopting a joined-up approach between government departments in relation to social work policy, reform, and practice, increased mental health support in the workplace, adopt anti-poverty as an underpinning principle at the heart of all reforms. Top tip 4, develop and embed a national workforce strategy for social work. This includes a national recruitment campaign to bolster the social work workforce, to develop a national workforce strategy in partnership with the sector and those assessing social work services, adopt the national capabilities framework as the career pathway for social work that promotes and recognizes the value of relationship-based social work and direct work. 3. Bursaries are critical for the pipeline of the next generation of social workers in prompting equity and access. A full review of the current social work student bursary is called for. Parity of access to funding for social work students is needed to attract people into the profession. Number 5, clear career pathways that are resourced and enable progression into social work must be available, including an expansion of grow your own and apprenticeship schemes funding and training to be made available to properly equip the workforce. Funding and equitable access to pathways into post-qualifying courses to be included as part of the profession specific national workforce strategy. The development, that is, the development of career pathways for social workers, including supporting their development as managers and leaders. More must be done by the government to utilize social work values, skills, and knowledge in management and leadership capabilities. The leadership of the sector is still not fully represented of the community of social work. The Workforce Race Equality Standard, WRAS, to be made mandatory. I hope that after today's events, you will go to the BASW website and download the resource for yourself and decide how you want to take action. This includes use the top tips to lobby your local MP to highlight the barriers that need to be addressed at the national level, which include tackling the recruitment and retention crisis, committing to and resourcing a national social workforce strategy, reviewing employment arrangements for social workers' workload, pay, and working conditions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Olu. And we will come back to the top tips that Olu's highlighted later in the event. Next, we're going to hear from Andy Gill about the top tips for employers.
Hi everyone, my name's Andy Gill. I've been involved in the 80-20 campaign for when it was first developed. My background is within children's social work, and most importantly, I had the privilege of being the chair of BASW England for just over 4 years. So I wanted to talk to you a bit about the employer's top tips. I think the first real positive thing about these set of tips is that it puts a clear responsibility and accountability back to employers to show leadership really in setting the right conditions for time for social work and relational practice. It then moves very practically into how employers can do that. The first area is really about keeping connected with your workforce. Gives examples of monthly voice of the workforce meetings, the primary role of the principal social worker in terms of promoting relational practice, and also doing regular health checks, just holding up the mirror to the workforce in terms of getting a litmus test on how far social workers feel on the ground that they're actually being given permission to practice in a way that is very much about more time for that direct contact with children, families and adults. We've already talked a bit about the need to simplify systems, processes, remove some of the bureaucracy that can get in the way of having the time that social workers appropriately need. We've got a real challenge, I think, across the country, that systems actually tend to lead practice or can lead practice, and what we need are systems that actually support the practice that we actually want to see in terms of delivery of social work. Talks also really well about the LGA standards for employers of social workers as a template really that employers can use, again, just to check out how far they're meeting some of those agreed standards across the sector. Talks very well about caseloads, workloads, certainly from my experience within the children's sector. My aspiration, I guess, is in terms of what good social work looks like in terms of having enough time. That's probably about 15 children. We're well off from that in many local authorities. Time for reflective practice, again, at the heart of those standards. So I guess the plea is that employers could really use those standards a lot more effectively in holding up the mirror and just reviewing where they're at in relation to those. The tips give a green light for employers to show leadership around proportionate and purposeful recording. And we've seen some really good shining examples of that in practice, family safeguarding being one of those, with a real focus on cutting down recording everything and being more focused on an analysis of what's happening for a child, and using monthly summary recording to best capture that, again freeing up more time. Employers having a responsibility to celebrate relational practice and outcomes for children and adults, and a variety of ways in which that can be achieved. 6 monthly annual social work awards, celebrating practice through practice weeks. And then on page 8, I really like these points really. It says employers need to demonstrate that they can support social workers to have control over their workforce and the right to say no if social workers feel they can't actually deliver the quality work that they realistically should be able to do. Autonomy to use their professional skills to the full. Opportunities for critical reflection through supervision and one-to-one peer support. Opportunities for collaborative working. An ability to influence practice at a strategic level, and to promote relational practice. I hope these top tips are really helpful for employers. It really does give a lot of practical ideas on how they can show leadership across the sector to support social work staff. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andy. That's great. And if we go over to Andrew now, who's going to do the top tips for practitioners.
Hi everybody. So I'd like just to unpick a few of these, the 6 top tips. They're all reproduced on the slide there. Sorry, I'll just introduce myself, getting order on there. I'm Andrew Rees. I'm just started as a professional officer with BASW, but I've been involved with BASW for several years, and have been part of the 80-20 campaign for a few years now, and was very keen to see adults included in it. So I'm very pleased to see this is relating to work with adults and with children and families. So yeah, I just want to pick what a couple of these might mean in practice for you. And this might be different depending on whether you're a frontline social worker, a frontline manager, or a more senior manager. I think my top tip on this as well is that social work has always been a disruptive profession. We don't do status quo. So I'm asking you to think about what you can do to take control within this, not lose control. So on the first top tip for direct work to be recognised, valued and supported as a priority, I think it's about thinking about this one person or one family at a time. You're not suddenly going to be able to have the time to do intensive work with everybody all at once. So choose one person, make a difference, convince your line manager, convince your the people you manage that actually by working in an intensive relationship based way that you're going to make a difference. You're going to reduce errors, you're going to develop better outcomes. You'll end up with making the system work better because of that input right into the beginning of the work you're doing with people, through using time to develop trust. Absolutely key, trust to relationship best practice, as Steph was telling us earlier. Top tip 3 about relationship-based culture is prioritise over bureaucratic measures of performance. Performance measures exist, but actually they're not the only way of telling the story about whether your practice is good or not. So what can you do to tell the story differently? I think it's really encouraging that CQC in their inspection regimes at the moment are talking about the importance of people's experience of interacting with social workers. So how can you tell the story about positive interactions? And I think relationship-based practice is key to that, and we can use that to when we're meeting CQC, whether as in your position statements you're presenting to them, or if you're meeting them on a one-to-one basis talking about a particular piece of work, draw out the experience of people, and you need to be able to sort of evidence that relationship-based practice as part of that. And that's a really strong justification for developing or being given permission to do relationship-based practice. And then the last one I wanted to pick up was about effective administrative support. I think lots of councils and lots of public sector bodies have moved towards admin self-service over the last few years, and I think there's a case to be made for moving back. What is it that you do in your team that you would benefit from an admin worker? One example I've heard of that's worked really well is, for example, using administrative support to book visits. Getting hold of people, it can take a lot of time. It might need a lot of repetition, keeping hold of it, keeping track of diaries, etc. If across your whole team you had someone doing for that, how much time would that free up, and what's the cost differential between a social worker booking their own visits and an administrator booking visits for them? So think within your team about how you might be able to make some sort of business case that will support change and actually save money as well. Okay, that's it from me, but do have a good read of the document. It's a really excellent resource, highly recommended. Thank you.
Thanks so much there, Andrew. And now I'll hand over to Amanda. Take us to 3 top tips for relationship-based social work in digital transformation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name's Amanda Takaraja. I'm the Principal Social Worker for Adults in Suffolk. And I will talk to you today about the top tips for relationship-based social work in the context of digital transformation. So we've heard about the importance of making time for social work, and we know that when used correctly, digital solutions are exciting, and they can be a real good opportunity for us to maximize choice in how people interact with us. While also freeing up practitioners to spend time with the people who require that. The top tips for relationship-based social work in the context of digital transformation document provides guidance on maintaining a relationship-based approach in a digital world, which can be quite tricky. The document emphasizes that while digital technology and artificial intelligence can streamline administrative tasks and some of the day-to-day stuff that we do, they must never fully replace the core of social work, which is human connection. Importantly as well, the document highlights the importance of transparency, ethical considerations, in terms of how we use AI. That is quite topical at the moment, and we need to make sure that we're on top of that, because otherwise it will sort of overtake us in that way. So we want to make sure, BASW would like to make sure that there's a national framework of ethical principles and clear communication about the use of AI to ensure accountability and uphold human rights as well. The document touches on the need to ensure digital inclusion and equality, and the need for social workers to develop digital capabilities as well. I'd like to highlight 2 of the top tips. There are 7 in total, which you'll see when you get the document. And I would like to highlight, the first one I'd like to highlight is the need to offer choice over methods of communication. It's important to give people options for how they want to communicate with us right from the start. We know that building relationships solely online can be tough, and it's not for everybody. And we want to make sure that people have options. So while digital communication is part of the offer, it shouldn't be the only option. People should have a range of choices at the very start and also at every stage. Communication approaches should be tailored to individual needs, especially where there are risks such as safeguarding, and it's crucial to provide information in accessible formats. Many local authorities, including our own, my own in Suffolk, have self-assessment options now. And we know that for some people, these are preferable because they can be less intrusive. However, they may not be suitable or accessible for everybody. And the top tips make it clear that these options should only be used where they are genuinely of benefit to the individual. And the Equality Act also talks about the need to ensure multiple forms of communication as well. And they can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. The second top tip I'd like to highlight is the need to champion relationship-based practice through human connection. So while AI can assist with some tasks, it should never replace the human element of our practice. building human connections is at the heart of social work. So I think it's really important that we remember that in terms of how we communicate with people, very often a lot of it is about our non-verbal cues, and when you replace face-to-face interaction, some of that is lost. And very often we need to build trust with people. We need to work with people going through crisis or difficult situations. And in those situations, social workers need to be able to pick up on those social cues. They need to be able to have a real world understanding of the person's circumstances, and to discuss those complex issues with individuals and families and communities is really important in a way that makes sure that risks are reduced and that minimizes disengagement as well. So I think the core here is to just remember that for some people, human connection will be absolutely crucial still. I'll hand you back to Steph. Thank you.
Thanks so much there, Amanda. That's great to hear from you. And thank you to all our presenters for introducing these new top tip resources. And now, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's time to hear from you. So do you want to pop your cameras on and please come in and share any reflections, ask any questions that you have. If there are lots of questions and comments from people, we will make sure we get to you in some way. So if it's not in the event, we will happily get in touch with you after the event. But we really are keen to hear from you as the audience. What do you think? What action do you think you might take in using the top tips to make time for social work a reality? There's some quick sort of questions and points on the screen here to kind of help with the conversation. I'm just going to have a little look in the chat, and I've seen lots of reflections coming in and links being shared, which is great. But who would like to? Oh, Julia, you've come in. We need to learn how to use new tools and skills. Can and should BASW help with this? Who would like to come in from the presenters, or anyone else would like, after hearing to answer Julia's question? We need to learn how to use new tools and skills. Can and should BASW help us with this? Julia, are you referring to, was that in response to the AI? Do you want to just come in? If that's possible?
Yes, it was. Yes, sorry. I didn't want this to dominate the discussion. I know a lot of people know I think and talk about AI a lot because I think it is a resource and it's the real world for the world that we live in. But we need to recognize that not all the people we work with are as deeply embedded in it and can't use it or don't use it. However, my question really is how do we learn? We must discuss. We must keep up with the pace. But how do we learn? Should BASW I think BASW should, but I think it needs to do it in partnership with others. But I'm really interested in what people think. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And as you said that, I think Duck, you put your hand up. Did you want to come in? Was it in response to Julia's reflection there?
I do.
You're on mute.
Hello, sorry about that. Absolutely, I lead on digital transformation in Brent. That's one of my portfolios. Absolutely, I think BASW is a bit behind the curve at the moment. We certainly do need to actually get our grips together around this new tech, particularly around the use of AI. I was thinking about this at length, as I do, but there are various government departments already working on this, and what I'm finding through the kind of forums and discussions that I've had is that there isn't that social work perspective in those conversations, and I think it's really important that we get that social work perspective in there. I hear that there is this human connection, absolutely, and that needs to be part of that. And I think the research, I was quoted by Selena, who's the lead for the transparency algorithm standards for government in DSIT. That's the Department for Science, Innovation, Technology. The research is that people like to have the sense of assurance that there's a human behind the machine. So there's always a check in place. So definitely, I think that we need to start helping colleagues and members in the association and beyond to familiarize themselves with tech and AI because they themselves would have to use it to help them in their work, but also to help society as well, to benefit from it. So we can either have a utopian view of it or a dystopian view of it, and I'll prefer that we take the initiative. So that'll be my point. And in terms of, I suppose, concrete actions that BASW could do, maybe what we should get together is a special interest group on AI to start that conversation and to start thinking about how we can influence the policy and some of the practice discussions that are going on at the moment.
Apologies, I was on mute. Yeah, thank you for coming in there. Would you mind popping your email in the chat so we can have some discussions outside of this, if that's possible?
That's fine.
Thank you so much. Amanda, did you want to come in on that point? And then I'll go to Jackie on Andrew's tip.
Yes, thank you, Steph. Very briefly wanted to come in on that. And it's obviously really good to hear what you were saying there about what's going on in Brent and your perspective. Wanted to offer some reassurance that the National Principal Social Worker Network is prioritising the use of AI as one of the things that we want to consider, making sure it's ethical, making sure that the right training and skills, etc., are made available to social workers. So we're working closely with the Department of Health and Social Care. We have meetings with the Chief Social Worker's Office, obviously pending a new Chief Social Worker soon, and we've had presentations, etc., looking at the introduction of AI from a social work perspective. So it was just to say that on a national level, obviously working alongside BASW, and I'm the Principal Social Work Network representative on the 80/20 campaign, so making sure those links are made strongly as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Amanda. There was a question from Jackie. I'm interested in Andrew's tip about recording what matters, not what counts. Is there confidence that social workers know how to do this with confidence?
Okay, so I'll come in on that. I have to be frank and say probably not, but I think that's something that we need to work on ourselves, and line managers, in particular frontline managers, should be working with the people they manage in order to think about how they're recording. The last council I worked in had a really had through the audit it had done of recording, had recognised that a lot of the recording was really quite transactional. I did this, I did that, and actually, you know, if putting yourself in the shoes of the person whose record it is, do you want to know how many times a person tried to phone you, or do you want to actually know something that was relevant and important to you within what you're recording? So I think all of us have a duty to think about what we record and why we record it, and make sure that if the person does choose to read their records, that they're actually going to understand it and it's going to make sense. But I think it's not just about what you record in your electronic system. It's about the telling the story differently, I think, was one of my really key points. And again, that's about thinking about how we can bring out the stories of change, and how particularly about someone's experience of working with the system is improving because of relationship-based practice. I think if we look at annual surveys that are done of people who use social care, that often their experience, their confidence, their feeling safe, etc., isn't necessarily being changed or improved by our intervention. So what are we doing in order to improve, and how do we focus more on making sure we improve their experience of interacting with us?
Thanks so much, Andrew. Andy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. I just to answer the question, I think if people actually have a good look in the top tips, there's some really good examples of proportionate recording, and some good examples of best use of language as well, actually, in terms of being more accessible to children and adults, particularly around family safeguarding. There's an example that people can click on and actually go and have a look at that. And also, BASW did a webinar, I think just over a year ago, that highlighted some of that work around proportionate recording. Also, Brighton and Hove have done some quite courageous work around cutting down recording. So again, there is a link and contact details on how that could be followed up by people who want to see how it could look practically.
Thanks, Andy. Liz, are there any other questions in the chat?
Thanks, Steph. Just having a quick look through whilst posting some links. I can't see any of the questions at the moment, but I think what would be helpful is to ask the audience to consider some of the questions on screen. Do you think?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So thinking about which of the top tips resonated with you and why? Someone like to pop their hand up and come in? Be lovely to hear from you. Just pop your camera on, pop your hand up. Which of the top tips resonated with you and why? Or if you prefer, how can the top tips create opportunities for you to make time for social work? And thanks, Liz. You'll see there that the time for social work through the family safeguarding model link in there. So there'll be some great stuff in relation to those questions around how do you record analytical and concisely, and really recording the right information to allow that time for social work. Have a little look at that and listen to that. That will be helpful for you. Okay. Give people a moment. Which of the top tips resonated with you and why?
I've got comments. Yeah, don't be shy.
Come on, bring it on.
Yeah, exactly. We've got some comments in the chat which are specifically focused around AI, but it would be really good, I think, to hear a bit more about some of the other aspects of relationship-based social work that we've been talking about today as well. So do get in touch about those.
From the top tips you've heard, what kind of come to mind when you were hearing? We've heard about for employers. Andy took us through those for those leaders potentially in the room and those managers, really how to make time for social work a reality. We've heard from practitioners, top tips for what we're inviting the government to consider. Anything on any of those top tips that kind of resonated with you? It'd be great to hear from you. Jackie, the admin support resonated with me as it's so hard to return to as suggested. Do you want to come in, Jackie?
Hello.
Hi, lovely to see you. You were just saying there about admin support. Do you want to say a bit more?
Yeah, well, I think when was it Andy that was speaking about that, or was it Andrew? Both Andys, aren't they? Yeah, that whole sort of self-directed kind of element of self-serving admin that is now added to workloads has been creeping in and was celebrated initially as a kind of form of autonomy in your workload. Managing your own workload, but in fact, actually, my experience is that it's been the opposite, because it's added to the bureaucratic workload. And I think it's been around for quite a long time now, because I'm a rather ancient social worker, and I do remember times when I actually had an administrator who organised my diary, calls, and when I talk to younger colleagues now, they're quite aghast at this. As though it was a kind of a luxury that meant that we could just swan about almost, doing things that they can't really imagine, when in fact, actually, I think it was more about that we had the time to get out and see people. So that really did resonate with me. But I have to say, I don't feel very optimistic that we could return to that kind of setup, because certainly the organisation I work in, that the first thing that would be said would be about the costs involved in that. And I don't really know how you get past it, really. That might not be the case in perhaps local authorities. I work for the voluntary sector. So that really did resonate with me. And you probably noticed as well, the other thing that resonated with me from my question was about recording, which I absolutely agree with, but I still find that I do come across people who are really not sure about how to record what matters as opposed to what counts, because of the accountability and auditing and liabilities that I think circulate around in people's thinking and minds quite a lot when they're practicing.
Thank you for that, Jackie. And it just made, as you were talking there, it really made me think about the work I do as a practice lead when we work with local authorities to introduce the family safeguarding model, and a big focus of that is to move away from process recording and really helping local authorities to think about that analysis and that kind of summary recording. And there's a big part for leaders to play in that, in giving permission for that and really supporting and being alongside, and just for practitioners to be able to have a go and try, and having that back and forth and that support built in the infrastructure to support local authorities and those within it to be able to record in this way. It takes time. It does take time. But what I've heard from social workers and managers in my role as a practice lead is that when people do get it, they get it. And actually, once they get to that point, they are able to see that actually that it does create time for social work. But that, that's one of many models, but one that you can tell I'm really, really passionate about, having seen it sort of in action. But there'll be some additional resources that come with the top tip suites and in the links in the chat. So have a look and come and get involved with us in BASW at Time for Social Work, and join the campaign. And you'll hear even more from people like myself that kind of sit within those roundtable events. I did see another hand go up, and then I think it went back down.
Yeah, it's me, Steph. I thought I was just going to come in and respond to Jackie.
Come in, Andrew.
Hi. I just giving an example, which might be slightly controversial, but I know of a team who, like a lot of teams, were struggling to recruit all the social workers. So they have often, nearly always, had a vacancy of some level or another within their social work team, and they persuaded their manager that if they were to spend some of that underspend on admin support to help with capacity, and that made a real difference in terms of their capacity. So there was money in the system. They didn't need to find new money because there was an underspend in the staffing budget. So that just might be something you might try. I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because they might turn around and say, well, we don't need as many social workers, but just sort of getting the balance right there, I think is tricky, but it is something definitely worth thinking about.
Thanks so much there, Andrew. What opportunities do you think these top tips create to make time for social work? Does anyone want to come in? I think we've got a couple of minutes left where we can spend some time on this.
Steph,
and if you're doing anything already, please come in.
Yeah, sorry, Steph. There's a comment as well from Alexandra in the chat about caseloads being a resounding problem, and calling for clear navigation on how cases should be weighted. In the complex world of social work, working on understanding demand versus complexity. Yep, that's an age-old issue that we're continually grappling with as a profession here. But what we've got there to support our workers in terms of capacity and demand, I think we've certainly picked that up in the top tips as an issue that we want to be campaigning on through our 80/20 as well. I don't know whether anyone wants to come in on that reflection from Alexandra there.
Thanks, Liz. You'd like to come in?
If I could just make a quick comment on that. Caseloads are pivotal, aren't they, really, to be honest with you? Because how can you do proper good social work when you've got 30 odd cases? It is very difficult, and there's clear leadership around that. And obviously in the top tips I spoke a bit about the role of organisations and employers to take a particular view on that and to work to reduce those caseloads. But I think also we're at the point actually where I think as semi-autonomous professionals, social workers on occasions have to say no, actually. And no, that's difficult, but actually, if you genuinely believe that you can't meet the needs of a child or adult, then that more difficult conversation will need to be had.
I think that's a really, really great point, Andy. And I think as we advocate in social work about truly hearing and responding to those with lived experience and those that we're helping and supporting, it's about providing and mirroring that, isn't it, through the support for those who are working with those that need help and support. Absolutely. So really being able to hear and feeling confident and able to say, creating that culture within your organisation that enables people to feel they have a voice, which is really important.
And I think at the same time, it's being solution focused as well, and showing examples where other councils have managed that more effectively in terms of creating lower caseloads. And, you know, the admin support bit is an important one. So I know of Hampshire, for instance, that have invested a lot of money on putting back business support to actually enable social workers to do what they're paid to do. Money is critical here, and I'm not saying it isn't, but I do think at the same time there are opportunities to turn the curve on it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it goes back to relationship-based practice again, doesn't it, Andy? When we think about, you know, family safeguarding model, you know, using motivational interviewing to develop trust in working relationships with those that need help and support, being able to then identify through motivational interviewing the person's own need to and their own evoking their own motivation to change, providing the right support at the right time by that person for that person to support them. And we know that achieves sustainable change. And I think when we think about time for social work, if we're achieving sustainable change, we are inherently, aren't we, supporting the reduction in workload for social workers? Because if families do get the right support at the right time by the right person, then we know that they won't come back round and have that require that need perhaps again in the future, which again reduces the workload. If we're recording analytically and concisely, having built those relationships with families, we know that then that creates that time. So, you know, there is that hope in there when we think about some local authorities that are and getting that right. And also when we think about business support as well, that's already been mentioned, we know that it is crucial. I've seen that as a practice lead. Investing in your business support is absolutely crucial to see that, you know, this is a reality, really. So I'm just mindful of time. If there are any other sort of questions or reflections that you want to share, or if there's questions that we haven't been able to get to, don't worry, we will pick that up after the event and we'll be in touch with you. If you do want to be part of the 80/20 campaign, or you want to join, or you've got ideas, or you've got things that you really wanted to share but you didn't get the opportunity to share today, where you've actually seen time for social work as a reality in your organisation, please get in touch. We really, really want to hear from you. We're just going to have a look at some key takeaways now. Just if you just pop it onto the next slide, we've just got about a minute left. It's just slide 17, I think. Just move that on one, Sheridan, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, it's just that one. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think, just as I was saying there, it's really important to remind you that despite the challenges, it is possible to create time for social work and practice in a relationship-based way. And we've heard some of those examples today, and there will be absolutely more. So really important that we celebrate that, as well as recognising the need for these tips. And thank you to everybody that's been a part of developing those and sharing those today. Just if you could just pop in the chat, we haven't got a minute, but we're going to take 1 minute. What you're going to take away from today, what action you're going to take, maybe share how your organisational culture supporting and promoting time for social work. So just as you're sort of, if you've got a minute, it'd be really, really great to hear from you as one of the key takeaways. And if you do want to get involved, please do. You can email england@baswa.co.uk. You can pop your contact details in the chat. And it's been absolutely great to have you here with us today. And thank you so much again to those presenters and those who were involved in developing the top tips that we've shared today. If you could provide feedback and tell us how we did with this event of the launch of our top tips, please do. There is a QR code that's just about there. It is to come on the screen. And if you didn't get any questions answered, we will be in touch. And anything you want to sort of share as you leave, please pop in the chat. And it was absolute pleasure to chair today. And thank you from me and everyone on the team for attending. Take care. Thanks, everyone.